Robyn. Welcome to the Jewelry Business Academy podcast. I'm so excited to have you joining me today. Thanks so much for being here.
Yeah. Thanks for having me. I'm excited to be here myself.
It's such a pleasure, and I'm really excited to hear lot more about your story and your journey and what inspired you to start creating memorial jewelry. So, before we dive into any of this, do you want to just go ahead and introduce yourself to our listeners and share a little bit about how you got to where you are today?
So my name's Aaron. I have a business called Maniac Metals where we create memorial jewelry. I've been making jewelry for probably 3 years now and memorial jewelry for about 2 years. And it kind of just happened one day. I had a buddy that's a jeweler, and he invited me over to his house to make a ring, and I fell in love with it and took all the money that I had saved, and I bought everything that I needed to buy to get my own bench, get my own tools and everything, and kind of just went from there, and it's snowballed into what it is now.
Oh, I love that so much. So this was about 3 years ago when you went to your friend and made your first ring.
It'll be 3 years pretty soon in the next couple months. That sounds right to me. Yeah.
Oh, I love this. So talk to us about the memorial aspect of your jewelry. Like what inspired you to make these memorial pieces?
I've seen it before, and when I started dating my wife about 2 years ago, she had actually lost her dad when she was super young, and the anniversary of his passing was coming up, and I wanted to do something special for her, and I asked like, hey, this might be like kind of weird, but can I have some of your dad's ashes? I'd like to make you something. I'd like to make you a necklace, and she gave me some, and I got to designing. I got to the drawing board, and that's how I ended up making my first piece. I posted that on Instagram. Someone asked for something similar, and I kept posting, and the requests kept coming, and yeah, kind of just the niche kind of fell into my lap more than I chased it.
Oh, I love that. That's how you know it's meant to be.
Right?
It,
Yeah.
I love that. What is your favorite part of running a memorial jewelry business?
I think like a lot of jewelers get the opportunity to work with clients that are going through super exciting times, right? Like engagements and, graduations, birthdays, etc. And I've always been drawn to the mental health field. I used to want to be a therapist, and I've always felt pretty called to help people who are suffering, and I think I didn't want to go to school anymore, and I didn't want to work in, a professional setting, so to say. So through, making memorial jewelry, I'm kind of able to combine those two things of, helping people who are going through a hard time, and using my hands and getting dirty and playing with fire.
Oh, I love that. That's a wonderful combination. And it's kind of got me thinking, I don't know if you know this, but when I was in high school, was very into science and then went to university and was, again, sciences, biology, all that stuff. And
Right.
never in a million years did I think I'd end up being a jewelry designer and then a business coach down the line. Like I just would never have imagined that's possible. And it's
Right.
fascinating what happens when you allow the universe to open up opportunities and you allow yourself to be like, oh, I think you said you wanted to be a therapist. So it sounds like you were studying, is that correct? You were studying to be a therapist at school?
That was kind of always what I had in my mind,
Hmm.
and I didn't study it for very long. I think I
Yeah.
took a couple semesters in a community college, and life just kind of got away from me, and
Yeah.
I stopped going. So when I started making jewelry, and when I was introduced to it, I was kind of in between jobs, and I was unhappy with what I was doing. So for me, it kind of checked all of my boxes.
Mm.
I could use my hands, I could be creative, and I wasn't going to destroy my body. And, the helping people part just kind of came later on naturally.
Yeah, I love that so much. It's just such a good reminder to anyone listening that sometimes, we think we want XYZ from life, but like things are going to open up and you'll end up like finding your purpose essentially in ways that you maybe would never be able to have imagined 5 or 7 years ago. I'm sure you didn't imagine you'd have a jewelry business.
No,
Um,
absolutely.
but I love how it's woven like your passion for working with your hands and creating the jewelry with your passion for helping people. I think that's beautiful when everything aligns so well. So obviously there's a lot of memorial jewelry out there and it's a very meaningful style of jewelry. Like there's a lot of emotions behind this style. What do you think makes your pieces and your process stand out to the families and the people that you serve? Like why do you think so many people are reaching out to you all the time?
I think because I offer a lot of transparency, and I like to think that in comparison, my pricing is pretty competitive. So I offer transparency with my pricing, and I take pride in, obviously I'm running a business and I need to support my family and keep myself afloat, but I also, find it super important to me that, like, yes, I'm a business, but also my customers and my community are people who are grieving. And I think through the content that I put out that showcases, how I handle cremated remains or how I handle this, special thing from their loved one,
Mhm.
and being transparent with that has kind of built a community where my customers trust me with such important stuff, because you can go and buy it anywhere. You could go and buy memorial jewelry on Amazon, but I think I offer a lot of personalization, and I try to keep the process very intimate. And I think transparency's got to be the biggest thing. Totally.
Mm. Yeah, transparency is so powerful. And from what I'm hearing, Aaron, is they're buying because of you. And I love this because I think so often brands or designers get caught up in they're buying because of XYZ reasons and they forget like
Right.
you are the secret sauce in your business. And I know you're saying
Sure.
transparency and pricing and all that, but from the way you're talking about this, they're buying because they trust you, they like
Right.
you, they trust that you're going to honor like the special piece in the best way possible. They like working with you. And so I think that's beautiful. You must have so many stories, but do you have a really moving story or memorable story of a client getting a piece from you or that they've shared with you after receiving one of your pieces?
Yeah, I actually, every single client's important, obviously, but something super cool that happened is, when my customers find out, I ship all over the world, but when my customers find out that I'm local to them, a lot of the times they'll opt in for doing like a pickup drop off type of situation, right? So I had a customer reach out to me that wanted to do a drop off of his dog's ashes because he found out that he was local to where I work. And coincidentally, I also had to take my dog out to use the restroom. So when he came, I got my dog. He's a basset hound, and we walked over to meet the customer. And the customer saw my dog and started crying because his dog was also a basset hound. So that one, I mean, I love my dog so much, so it hit pretty close to me, because I'm thinking like, this dog was like the same as my dog. So that was a pretty cool coincidence. And I also have I'm a new father, so a lot of the times, like when I get parents that have lost their children, that's always something that hits a little closer to home. You know, children who are stillborn, or things like that, anything with parents and their children is always, it always tugs on my heartstrings. Yeah, so
Mm.
those are a couple um those are a couple examples, definitely.
Oh my goodness. Yeah, I can imagine it's both beautiful that you're able to create these pieces for them and it takes an emotional toll as well. Like it's a lot to be processing the loss that so many people are dealing with at different times. So I'm curious, Aaron, you obviously you have your jewelry business, but it's an emotional tied jewelry business. It's an emotional space when you're working with your clients. How do you balance being creative, being the CEO of your business, and then also like being the caretaker slash therapist for your clients and like holding space for them? How do you navigate that?
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely a challenge. It's a family business. I have my wife help me a little bit with clerical tasks. I try to delegate where I can. And something that I never want to lose sight of is, the fabrication itself. That's not something I would ever personally want to 100% outsource, just because, like we were talking about earlier, my customers buy from me because they trust me, and that's
Yeah.
something that I'd like to maintain and I'd like to keep consistent. Juggling it is definitely hard, and some days are easier than others. And I think it's kind of taken some playing around with and figuring out what works for me. Um, but it's definitely a challenge. And there's something that I heard about on your podcast. I forget the certain phrase that you use for it, but it's like where you take inventory of everything that you do, so you can kind of like pick apart where you're spending too much time, or where you should be spending more time, right? So that's something
Yeah.
that I also kind of had to implement and play around with to figure out, what works for me, and how can I spend time with the workload that I have on each individual piece to, give it the respect that it deserves, right? But also get things back to their homes in a timely manner, right? So it's a lot to juggle, and I think first and foremost, the most important thing is like communication with my customers. And that
Mm.
was a hard lesson for me to learn, because, I don't want to say that that my business blew up overnight, but it definitely felt like I was getting, little orders, and I had a couple videos that did perform really well, and all of a sudden I had like 50 that I was backloaded on, so that was really overwhelming. And I've there have been times when I've made mistakes and I've fallen short, right? And I can only learn from that. And I'm just a human, and I think everybody understands that. My customers understand that, but the most important thing is that I communicate efficiently, and
Mhm.
promptly if something comes up, right? So I think that's the biggest thing for me, definitely.
Yeah, communication with customers can be game changing. It's the difference between someone being like, oh my gosh, have I been scammed? Have they lost XYZ? Like, what's
Right.
happening? Versus being like, oh, all good. Aaron's got it. He's letting me know. He's keeping me posted. But I'm so glad you did the time audit. That's what it sounds like you did, the time audit of like where your time and energy is going every single day, especially when you have a limited number of pieces you can be making, because like you said, it's you don't want to outsource that part of the process because of how meaningful it
Right.
is and how your customers trust you. So I love that you were able to do that time audit. Did anything stand out to you when you did the time audit where it's like, oh, you know what, I'm going to cut back here?
It was kind of probably not the best time for me to do it, because
Yeah.
I had just had a baby. Me and my wife, we had
Oh.
just had our first kid. So it's like, I didn't have there was the time was
No
all over the
routine.
place, right?
Yeah.
But every now and then I like to check back in with it, and kind of just take a look, and recently something that I've done is revamp the way that I batch my orders. So what I had done before is I would give myself like 10 a week, and I'd say, okay, I'm starting on Monday and I have to finish these 10 orders by Friday. And
Mhm.
that means that I'm, fabricating, working on 10 pieces at once. I have to ship 10 pieces at once. Everything has to be done. And it's like so many on my bench, right? So I was like, okay, I need to get like caught up for Christmas. I want to set a reasonable deadline. So something that I've kind of rolled in now is, instead of batching by the week, I batch my work by the day. Like, okay, I have
Mhm.
3 today, which feels a lot more manageable than having 10 at a time. And
Yeah.
paradoxically, I actually get more done that way. I can easily get 3 done in a day, but working at so many things working on so many things at a time was challenging. So yeah, like I said, it's just kind of playing around with what works for me and my what works with my life too. So it was
Yeah.
a challenge, but I think I've finally gotten into the flow of things.
I love that. It's so interesting how when we actually limit the time that we have, like you said, so looking at a day to day basis, what you need to do, and you just be like, okay, I'm just going to do these 3 rings or whatever it is per day, you do get more done over a week's period. And
Yeah.
it's a big misconception a lot of people have is that they're like, oh, I have like all this time, I can get all this stuff done. And the more time we give ourselves, the less stuff we get done. It's kind of
Hmm.
like the best example is if you have to go ship postcards out to friends and family over the holidays.
Right.
It's like that can take someone 2 minutes to just quickly
Hmm.
write and trip and be done with it. But that same task can take someone else like 5 hours easily.
Right.
And it's just like we have to look at how much time we're giving ourselves and then break it down into like doable things so we don't feel overwhelmed to get started. So I love that that's working so well for you, Aaron. That's awesome. And when it comes to getting your brand Maniac Metals in front of more customers, in front of more people who could really benefit from what you're creating, what do you feel like is working really well for you right now?
Most of my marketing is done on social media. I try to be really consistent with posting on Instagram. Everything kind of changed for me when I started like showing my face and showing my personality. I think that
Mm,
was kind of when the tables turned a little bit. Word of mouth is also a really big thing. If someone's looking for somebody that they trust, recommendations get passed down the line. I'm trying to be a little more involved in my local community. A big goal of mine is to eventually open up a brick and mortar shop. So actually, next month I'm going to be doing a memorial jewelry workshop where people can
mm,
come and kind of have a hands-on experience with making their own memorial jewelry. So that's something that I'm also trying to push out, and I think would be a fun opportunity for my customers and for me as well. But definitely, like social media is, the biggest thing for me in my business. Email marketing, text messages, but it's I think the biggest thing is adjusting to the algorithm changes and everything. What worked 6 months ago isn't working anymore today, so you kind of have to pivot a little bit. That's what I found. And when I see success on something, I try to copy it and allow it to snowball until it doesn't work anymore. So it's
mm.
just all about being flexible in my strategy, right?
I love that so much, Aaron, and I love that you embrace showing your face more. It's game changing when it comes to content and looking at like what's working and doubling down on that until it no longer works and being open to pivoting. It's such a an important trait as a business owner to be committed to doing something long enough to like see it through, but also knowing when to be like, okay, this we need to pivot, we need to let go, we need to test something else here as well. So sounds like you've got that down. What do you feel like when it comes to getting into in front of more people? Do you feel like there's any area that feels a little stuck or it feels uncertain?
I think there's just times I think the most frustrating part for me is when I work really hard on a piece of content and I'm like, man, this is awesome. Like my not only is my audience gonna love this, but this is gonna perform really well, and a lot of new people are gonna find it. And I post it and it just doesn't do well. That's always a little discouraging, right? But then on
Yeah.
the flip side, I can throw together something in 5 minutes and post it, and it can, do extremely well. So I think, yeah, I think that can be challenging, definitely, when I work super hard on something and it doesn't end up doing well. But I also know that's not necessarily a reflection on who I am as a person or a business owner or a jeweler, right? It's just kind of like it takes consistency, like everybody talks about, but at the same time, sometimes it's just the luck of the draw, right?
Mm. Oh, yeah, 100%. I think so many people listening are going to resonate with what you just shared because it is deflating sometimes when you put a lot of time and energy into a piece of content and it doesn't, meet your expectations essentially. But if we attach our self worth to what we expect it to be producing for us, we end up on this roller coaster. And it sounds like you've done a really good job of detaching from that. So it's like, yeah, I'm a little deflated, but like, hey, we're going to keep showing up when it's not going to hinder us from showing up for our business and creating more marketing content either. So I really admire that, Aaron. And so I have a fun question for you.
Sure.
If demand for your jewelry suddenly doubled or tripled tomorrow morning, what part of your business do you feel like might be the hardest to keep up with?
Definitely, absolutely the fabrication.
Mm,
That would definitely be the hardest, because everything is made by hand, and
mm,
I'm the only person doing it. And at that point, if it really got to a point that felt unmanageable for me to handle, I don't want my turnaround time to be 6 months, so I'd like to eventually hire somebody to come help me, and if I
mm.
was selling enough to be able to do that, I would absolutely do that, while still, being hands on with myself, but being able to, delegate things like polishing or making bezels or even just like shipping my orders. I think if my sales doubled or tripled overnight, that would absolutely be something that would need to happen.
Yeah, 100%. And it's interesting because that's a great example actually of where scaling gives you your time back if
Right.
you get the right people and systems in place. Because it's like, hey,
Hmm.
double sales. And if you get the right person helping polish, package, all that stuff, you can actually be buying more time back as well. So I really love that. I am curious. So, we obviously have a lot of women on the podcast. We do have some men joining us, but I've never had the opportunity to ask this question. So, I'm
Okay.
excited. You have just is it do you have one baby or
One baby.
you have one baby? And so
Hmm.
you are a father juggling fatherhood and building your business. And it sounds like it's a family business. Sounds like your wife is involved as well. How's that been for you? What's that been like your work life integration? How does it flow? What's working? Like what are you loving about it?
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely been a roller coaster. It was a huge adjustment. I definitely really needed to take a closer look at my time management when he was first born. Like I said, now I'm doing a lot better at that, but I think I am honestly like I get to work from home. I get to set my own hours. I get to be there with my family, and the business that I've built has, given me the opportunity to do that, and
Mm,
my wife still works. She works a job, and I can take a day off and take care of my son. We don't need to have a babysitter for that type of thing, and something I always wanted to be was a present father, and I couldn't imagine. I'm sure I would make it work, right? But it would be tenfold harder if I was stuck at a 9 to 5 job. So, I'm
mm,
super blessed to, be in that position. It's definitely had its challenges, right? Like I have my son sleeping in the next room and I'm hammering in this room, so sometimes it's like, okay, I'll solder instead of hammer right now while he's sleeping. So
yeah.
it's challenging in that aspect sometimes, and I do look forward to the day that I have a studio that's outside of my living situation, and that's I'm trying to get that ball in motion a little bit, but for now I'm content with being here at home with my family,
Mm.
and I wouldn't have it any other way at this moment, definitely.
Oh, that's so beautiful. I love that so much. And I love that you're able to be so present with him while he's in that newborn phase and like still young. Because I think a lot of I don't know. I think a lot of people miss out on that when they are in these like very intense jobs where you have to be out all the time and you come home late at night. And so I think it's beautiful that you've built your life so intentionally around this and built your business in a way that you get to spend time at home and have that flexibility. So, what's your big vision for your business over the next 12 months? What's the goals? What impact do you hope your brand has on people's lives?
Yeah, that's a great question. Like we were talking about earlier, I think the next big goal to me is to really lean into the workshop thing. In my area, there's not a lot of other young jewelers, and there's nobody who's teaching this type of stuff, and it's not necessarily extremely accessible, and specifically memorial jewelry, right? So I think I'm really looking forward to that workshop that I'm going to be hosting, and I'm really looking forward to being even more hands-on with my clients and giving them the opportunity to play more of an active role in creating their pieces, right?
Mm,
And I think, yeah, the big picture for me is just keep doing what I'm doing, and I'd like to do some more workshops, and I'd like to make more money too, right? Wouldn't everybody? I think that's a goal of mine. And I want to keep connecting with people. I want to keep building relationships with my customers, building relationships with other people in the jewelry community, and yeah, I mean, like we were saying with social media, like all you can really do is just take the action and kind of relinquish control of whatever the outcome is going to be. So the next 12 months, I'm just going to be doing everything that I can, right? Taking the
mm,
action, and I'll definitely have to. I'm a big list person. I like to list out my goals, so that's
yeah.
something that I'd like to do soon, right? But I think just being more involved in my local community and teaching people about like the art of metalsmithing and specifically memorial jewelry, right? Because
Mhm.
it's deeply personal and intimate, and I think everybody who is even remotely interested in that should have the opportunity to explore it. So I'd like to be that person, at least for my local area.
Mm, that is beautiful. Well, I'm so excited for you. We'll be following along and watching this unfold for you. And I'm excited for you to be doing those workshops. I think it's going to be so meaningful and so connective for people to be able to actually be part of the process and be interacting with you more. So I also I know we're going to have so many listeners, Aaron, who are just going to feel so inspired by your journey and they're going to want to follow along and connect with you and support you. So, where can our listeners find you and how can they support you?
Yeah, Instagram's the best. At Maniac Metals, it's spelled Mayniac Metals. It's a play on my last name because my last name's May. So
Oh,
misspelled on purpose, which was a poor marketing decision, but we're here, so it's okay.
you're here. Oh my gosh. No, I love it. Thank you again so much for joining me, Aaron. This has been so wonderful. And thank you so much for being so open and vulnerable about your journey and building this business and what you've been navigating. Is there anything else you wanted to share before we wrap it up?
No, I think I'm all good, and I had
Oh,
a
good.
great time doing this, and thanks for having me on. I had a lot of fun too.
It is such a pleasure. Thank you again so much.
Yeah, of course.